You buy frozen broccoli because it's convenient, it lasts forever, and honestly, it's a lot easier than watching fresh broccoli go bad in the fridge. But then you hear something online that makes you wonder, is frozen broccoli actually giving me the same benefits as fresh broccoli? The answer is yes and no. Frozen broccoli is still a nutritious vegetable, but if you are eating broccoli specifically because of sulforaphane, one of its most studied bioactive compounds, freezing can change something important. But here's the good news. You don't need to throw out the broccoli in your freezer. There's a simple way to make up for what it may have lost. I am Dr. Lucia Aronica, lecturer in epigenetics and nutrigenomics at Stanford University. And in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what happens to broccoli when it's frozen, whether cooking it changes anything, and what you can do with the broccoli already sitting in your freezer. Your broccoli is a little bit like a glow stick. A glow stick contains two components that are kept apart until you snap it. Once they come together, a chemical reaction begins. Broccoli has a similar system. Inside the plant are two components that are normally kept separate. One is glucoraphanin. The other is an enzyme called myrosinase. When you chop, chew, or crush broccoli, you break those compartments apart, allowing them to interact. That reaction can produce sulforaphane, and sulforaphane is particularly interesting to me because it's what I call an epinutrient, a food compound that can influence how genes are turned on or off in your cells. Unlike an antioxidant, such as vitamin C, sulforaphane can help switch on some of your body's own antioxidant and cellular defense systems. So this isn't simply a question of whether frozen broccoli still contains vitamins or fiber. The more specific question is whether it can still produce as much of this particular compound. And that's where the glow stick becomes really useful. With fresh broccoli, when you chop it, you are essentially starting the reaction. But with frozen broccoli, that reaction can become much harder to start. It's a little like opening up the glow stick and finding that one of the components needed for the reaction is no longer working. To understand why, we need to look at what happens before the broccoli ever reaches your freezer. Frozen broccoli doesn't usually go straight from the field into the freezer. Before it's frozen, it's typically briefly blanched, exposed to heat to prepare it for storage. And this is where our glow stick analogy becomes important. Remember, broccoli needs two components for this reaction: glucoraphanin, the precursor, and myrosinase, the enzyme that helps convert it into sulforaphane. The heat used before freezing can greatly reduce the activity of broccoli's own myrosinase. So you can think of a frozen broccoli as a broken glow stick. It may still contain the precursor, glucoraphanin, but one of the components needed to efficiently start the reaction may no longer be working. And this also answers one of the questions I get asked all the time. But isn't broccoli already cut before it's frozen? Doesn't that activate it? Not necessarily. Cutting the broccoli can start the reaction because it brings those two components together. But if heat is applied shortly afterwards, there may not be enough time for the reaction to produce as much sulforaphane as it could. And once the broccoli's own myrosinase has been inactivated by heat, simply thawing it or cooking it differently doesn't bring that enzyme back. So, if the broccoli still has glucoraphanin but much less active myrosinase, what happens when you eat it? That's where the story gets a little more interesting. When you eat broccoli, some of that glucoraphanin can still be converted by bacteria in your gut, but that conversion can vary enormously from person to person. Some people may convert very little, while others may convert substantially more. It depends, in part, on the microbes living in your gut and the enzymes they produce. So, even if two people eat exactly the same serving of frozen broccoli, they may not end up producing the same amount of sulforaphane. But there is another option. Instead of relying entirely on your gut microbiome to do that conversion, you can provide the enzyme directly. And this is where things get surprisingly practical. You don't necessarily need to get that myrosinase from broccoli itself. Other foods in the cruciferous family contain it too. One of the simplest options is mustard powder. Your frozen broccoli may still have one part of the glow stick. The mustard provides the other part that allows the reaction to happen. Cook your frozen broccoli as you normally would. Then add a small amount afterwards. As a practical starting point, I use about a teaspoon of mustard powder for every 100 grams of broccoli. If you prefer prepared mustard, about a tablespoon can be another option. The myrosinase from the mustard can then help convert some of the glucoraphan that's still in the broccoli into sulforaphane. And this isn't just a kitchen theory. Studies have found that adding a myrosinase-rich food such as mustard seed can substantially increase the amount of sulforaphane formed from frozen broccoli. And mustard isn't the only option. Raw cruciferous foods such as radish or arugula can also provide myrosinase. The important point is that you are combining the cooked or frozen broccoli, which may still contain glucoraphanin, with a source of active myrosinase. So, if you are eating frozen broccoli regularly, this is probably the simplest thing I would change. Cook it as you normally would, and then add a small amount of a raw myrosinase-containing food. And now that we know how to work with frozen broccoli, there's one more important question. What should you do when your broccoli is fresh? Fresh broccoli needs to be handled a little differently. With frozen broccoli, much of the broccoli's own myrosinase may already have been inactivated before it reaches your kitchen, but with fresh broccoli, the enzyme is still there. Remember our glow stick? The two components are still inside the broccoli, separated from each other. When you chop it, you bring them together and start the reaction. But here's the part most people miss. Don't chop your broccoli and immediately throw it into a hot pan. Give that reaction some time to happen first. My practical recommendation is to chop your broccoli and wait roughly 30 to 40 minutes before cooking it. You don't have to stand around watching it. Just chop it first, then get on with the rest of your meal. That gives broccoli's own enzyme time to form more sulforaphane before heat reduces its activity. And the exact timing isn't magic. You don't suddenly get nothing at 29 minutes and everything at 40. 30 to 40 minutes is a useful kitchen target, not a laboratory stopwatch. The amount formed can depend on things like how the broccoli is chopped and how long you leave it. So, the practical takeaway is simple. Fresh broccoli, chop, wait, then cook. Frozen broccoli, cook, then add a source of myrosinase. So, broccoli is just one example of a much bigger idea. How we prepare our food can change the biological information our bodies receive. And if you are a health professional or coach who wants to translate that science into practical patient care, that's exactly why I'm creating EpiCert. It's the first certification designed to help health professionals and coaches turn the epi-nutrition framework I teach at Stanford into practical tools, protocols and strategies for their patients and clients. The course isn't open yet, but you can join the waitlist below to be the first to know when it launches. And if you are here because you just want to get more out of your broccoli, I've got plenty more for you right here. Ciao!